Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And I thought we could go back to a series 3, 4, 5 years old on this channel. Something I really enjoyed on World Building Wednesdays. And that is taking a simple object or identity or subject in role-playing games or something in pop culture or whatever and building a world around it. This one is very common. It's about aberrant eldritch horrors, Lovecraftian horrors, and it's used very, very commonly in the tabletop role-playing game community. And it also is starts with letter A in Dungeons and Dragons, which is now in the Creative Commons. And I thought we would just conceive and maybe have a redo of an old series on this channel and just talk about like the world building. Now, one of the rules in yeah, Aberrant Horrors would be a great RPG title. Yeah, I agree. And but one of the rules in our world building Wednesdays is that um, given all other outside influences, the specific subject has dominated the world in which we are talking. Maybe has dominated the the physical structure of this world in which we are going to discuss the culture, the timeline of events, whatever it may be. And again, these are old videos where we've done one on every single character class in Dungeons and Dragons. And starting with Aberrants, we actually started to do them on all of the creature types, and even made cities and cultures based on the the 8 classic Dungeons and Dragons arcane schools or traditions. Abjuration, necromancy, conjuration, that kind of thing. So let's get into aberrant horrors, Lovecraftian horrors, the mind flayers and intellect devourers. Beholders fit into that group and such. Let's just share a little bit of an image here, just so we can get some visualization uh, to talk about what we have here. Let's. Mm, nah, this is better. So, a lot of the ideas in fantasy about Lovecraftian horrors is that these are creatures that are not, they cannot be understood, and they usually either come from the deep sea or deep space, like the gyre, the maelstrom, so someplace so far out that it is so far distant that it doesn't, they come from a place that doesn't follow the same rules of known reality. But whatever the case may be, they almost seem to be invaders from a different place. And it's possible that um, in the distant past or recent past, even, that a cult, a curse, a device may have opened up a portal or drew them into society. Often they survive on the the psychic energies or even the brains of humanity, and it's possible that the a mindless force like brutal troops or something grown or developed in hives or something may have integrated into or invaded the landscape and have corralled people, maybe trying to capture people and into camps and such to use them and their psychic abilities and whatnot. It may also be that humanity may have an untapped feature, and this is why these aberrant creatures, these Lovecraftian horrors, have come here to basically harvest humanity. And uh, it could make strange bedfellows if many of the other fantasy races and monsters are still around. So, like, people may find like dragons and vampires and giants, and some of our classic enemies might become um, have a tenuous relationship in terms of finding a common enemy, especially if Lovecraftian horrors have taken over. I'm thinking of now. I understand that in the canon of aberrants in fantasy, that like beholders are kind of like the enemies of mind flayers and such. But I'm imagining that even if they themselves aren't like, even if they don't have a relationship with each other, that combined together they are enemies of everyone else. Of course, we have a lot of very common traits that would uh, be amongst all the aberrant creatures. So if you wanted to use other creatures and make them aberrant, just giving them tentacles or tendrils, multiple eyes, strange multiple limbs, um, uh, maybe even making them blind, and you could take other creatures like gargoyles or naga or displacer beasts or something and just describe them differently. Like describing displacer beasts with like oily black skin, uh, vaguely lupine, but maybe it doesn't even have a classic feline head. Maybe it's just like a lamprey maw on the end of it, and it still has the tentacles or something. Also, the the spell casting classes, especially those that have a tend towards a high intelligence and wisdom, might be more likely than not to be victims, hunted down and captured to be harvested because of their their intellect and their brain power. Or there may even be like sorceress people born with strange psychic like abilities that are being hunted down, and maybe there are communities that willingly offer up these individuals into the population. I mean, willingly offer these people that are in the population up to their enemies to remain safe and to keep these uh, unknowable creatures at bay. There may even be individuals born, or maybe even have an ability to study to connect mentally with the with aberrants that tend to be more psychic, and although maybe not having a long lifespan, or not having a very long uh, having sanity for very long, maybe these are individuals that are specially trained so that they could navigate the uncharted landscape to keep people safe, because they can sense when they're coming, or even use their minds to keep people undetected, while the, I don't know, floating eyes and orbs and things, or jellyfish like creatures are floating around looking for victims or humanity or something, as people hide in caves and the dark recesses of the wider world. um, I'm thinking anything from strange uh, H.R. Geiger styled uh, hives to floating, strangely organic floating structures, may be something that exists in this world. And the player characters may need to navigate inside of them to rescue people, to find uh, bits and pieces of the past, some artifacts, bits of history, things like that that may have been captured, or they want to be discovered by these Lovecraftian horrors, and the player characters need to go in and find them. Now, it might be that these alien horrors don't even know, like they don't value what we value, so art and literature and even some of the artifacts might even be considered to be useless, but they might be captured as a side effect of sorts. Like, oh, we've got the humans, and they happen to be wearing these strange uh, leather and metal armor and using weaponry that's useless against us. So, hey, let's just dump it in the gullet of our living creature and then move on. It's like, oh, hey, Mike, what's going on there, man? Yeah, I get it. So I'm doing a world building. I'm going back to the world building Wednesday, where we're world building off of Lovecraftian horrors. So we can, if we want to get down, maybe narrow this down a little bit. Um, I imagine as far as the bacon necktie side of the morality scale. It's silly. Um, yeah, I think these Lovecraftian. I think we all have a strange. It's a like a love hate for these Lovecraftian creatures because it's difficult for us to imagine something that we can't imagine. And as human beings, like we imagine things in the dark, and we when we have nightmares, we imagine these creatures being every part of all of our nightmares combined. It's kind of where dragons come from, right? We fear snakes, and we fear um, large predators like bears and cats. We can't fly, so we fear things that fly through the air, like birds and bats. And uh, humanity has a natural fear of fire and storms, and dragons kind of make up all of that. Original dragons didn't even look like the 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 classic dragons we have today. I mean, many of them were like acidic, and they had multiple eyes and things. And maybe in this world, it's the exact same thing. And what I love about the idea of world building with these is that the the physical fantasy hit points, armor class, and all that stuff. Yeah, that's good, but absolutely having some kind of loss of insanity track as well is also a big deal. And I think having something like this in the world where maybe those who aren't very physically adept, the characters who you would be able to put points or shift your thinking into going like, you know what, being the physically toughest isn't really important, but the person who's got the the mental ability or the spells or the device that can hide our presence from these strange omnipresent creatures, I think those might be the very important individuals. Yeah. Yeah. The Now Mike says the trick to aberrations is playing up the horror aspect with textures, noises, body horror, and so on. Absolutely. Like for example, and this is just a very small part. There's a in the movie Dune, there's an aside, and they don't explain it. In the book, it's explained, but in the movie, they really don't explain it. That Baron Harkonnen, or the Harkonnen Baron, or whatever, um, has this spider-like creature, oily, blackened creature that walks in the corner. And in the book, it's described as a human being that was dismembered and reassembled like a spider. And the spider legs are actually human arms, and the body, it was twisted. And I'm imagining, I can't stand body horror, which just but I love it, having eyes and mouths where they don't belong, having multiple limbs, maybe visibly stitched around us, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. To Yeah, Mike says, "To avoid the OGL and SRD, I have my own list of aberrations that I inflict upon my players." I see a wasp-like mind flayers over there, Mike. Yeah, hell yeah. The Inn King says, "On one hand, it's hard to depict a truly alien creature." Yep, that's true. On the other hand, it doesn't take much to spook us. Michael Myers is a dude who's just slightly off. He is a terror. Exactly. And it could be like I'm imagining agents. We could split the difference, right? Where we have agents who have aligned themselves to these Lovecraftian horrors. Um, Air quotes. There are different tier levels of creatures, right? So if the Lovecraftian horrors live in these floating, dare I say, organic whale-like ships, or nautiluses, nautiloids, that scour the countryside, or hives that burrow deep into the earth, or have grown larger than mountains or something. But I could see agents in the middle where you might have almost like devotees or zealots or cultists or something, where Maybe they've blinded themselves, but instead floating over their shoulder is a giant eyeball that sees everything. And that could be like a reskinned beholder, or a using a stat block from like a naga or something, or a hag or whatever. Maybe these are people whose literal shadows come alive, and they themselves are weak, but their shadows move around and such. I mean, there's all kinds of little strange ways that we could do it, where stitch together eyes, because they've poked them out, or like, when they open their mouth, there's like an eyeball in it, or they open up their robes and their chest is just full of like sores and mouths and eyes opening, like a humanoid version of a gibbering or gibbering mouther, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Yeah. Samar says, well, honestly, for me, the best way to work through it is just have Lovecraftian creatures do things. Write out one like, one dislike, and one love hate. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are they looking for? I think that it's kind of. I think there's a way to make objectives kind of cool if, for example, let's say that for some strange reason these Lovecraftian creatures are drawn to a certain type of music, and for some strange reason they are so drawn to the music that it like pacifies them, but the minute you stop playing the music they get horribly violent. This the same plot was also used in, what is it, Jack and the Beanstalk, I think, the animated series or something, animated movie, uh Disney movie. But I mean, something like that could happen. Or maybe there's a certain cabal of wizards, and just because of their high intelligence, these Lovecraftian creatures are going after them, and the wizards like, please save us, like they've eaten the brains of three of our friends. Or maybe there are individuals that are like cages or something around their neck, and they're bald, and there's like basically like a there's like a they're like pre-food, people walking around as pre-food. They haven't been fed on yet, but some kind of contraption is around their neck and head, so that everyone knows that to not touch them, because they might live a week, a month, years, but at some point they're going to be pre-food and just be eaten. And they know this, but in return, people leave them alone. It's kind of like a weird social strata. I don't know. I just came out of my ass, but yeah. Zamar says, for example, I had a Lovecraftian horror that ate skin, any skin. It liked fear and literally ate your fear so it could get close to you. Disliked fire and hated happiness. Um, that would be also a very strange pacifying effect. Like, let's say, not the skin part, which is pretty nasty, which I love. It's nasty. But imagine like something that feeds psychically, that removes people's fears. So in a way, it like bolsters it bolsters the aggression level of humans that are never, like, not afraid, even though people are going like, it's taking away your memories, and the things that make us afraid give us a longer life. There's a reason why we are afraid of storms, and we were afraid of fire and afraid of predators. That kept us alive. Not having that fear, maybe like the humans, your average human being is like as tough as an ogre, but they also don't have any common sense, right? Um, yeah, the End King says Muay Thai is called the art of eight limbs. Yep. Your fists, your feet, your elbows, and your knees. Although the head kind of fits in there a little bit too. And wrestlers often use their head as a third limbs to control their opponents. That isn't related to Aberrant horror, but it could be. Yeah. Yes. Although that would be a cool martial focus, though, wouldn't it? In this kind of strange world. Um, So Marissa goes on to talk about these skin eaters. Okay, if you were happy and said so to me, I would have it leave you alone because you were not food. But if you had a sanity break, it would be drawn to you, and that includes the NPCs. And the opposite could be true, that those that are afflicted with mental acuities, let's say, mental divergence might be ignored, or like it could be one, it could fall on one or the other. Like maybe they're extremely drawn to it, or maybe go like they're not drawn to you at all. They want you to become, this is the weird thing. They want you to become the best that you can be mentally and spiritually so that you taste better, something like that. Mike says, the Vespidroid, the Wasp Kings, and the Conliap. I'm butchering your pronunciations. And the Cerebugs, which are giant flies that bore into your skull and puppet you around, and locust men that hunt and eat live prey. The list goes on. I love it, and I love the idea of using, like, if you really love Lovecraftian horror, but you feel like it's been a little bit overdone, uh, flipping it like Mike did into other biologics that we already have on this planet, like bugs or felines or crustaceans or avians or something, or mixing and matching them with other types of monster types in our fantasy, like constructs. Could you imagine machines walking around with a brain case inside of them, and they're going around capturing people and basically ripping their spinal cords and brains out and using their brains in jars and attaching them into bodies and sticking electrodes, and like that. It's the same thing but different concept. Instead of like Lovecraftian biologic horrors from a deep space, they could be constructs and AIs and robots. They could be what's something else? They could be plants, where plants have overgrown in a world. There actually is a setting. Uh, oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's a setting where um, life and humanity cannot touch the ground because of the overgrowth of plants, to the point where they have these sailing craft with paddles that like flow over this living sea or something like that. So plants could be, I think, is a really good one. Oozes are another creature type that are very Lovecraftian. Excuse me. The Yanking says a creature's shadow coming to life. You could have a twisted version of Peter Pan. Yeah, slipping into a home looking for Wendy to teach her to fly. Yeah. Ooh. You can fly, Wendy. Now jump out the window. She's like, no. Oh, no, you're going to live your dream. You're going to push. Oh, Wendy's best friend sitting outside, young kid or something, 17 years old, just rocking back and forth because he's already pulled his eyes out with his fingers, and they're just bloody stumps, and his shadow is just like, oh, you're going to fly, Wendy. Nasty. I love it. I absolutely love it. Peter Pan is in the public domain. We could turn that. We could flip it on its head. I believe. I think it's in public domain. Mike says I've used plant creatures to the same effect. Yeah, thorn pods. Yep, crawling about on thorny tentacle roots, charming you with their scent, then consuming you. Of course, and then people. Listen, you got to have sacks full of people that where the plant opens up and they're covered in like fluid and nectar, and they're like naked and everything. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers, yeah. Mike says catapult trees. Catapult. Oh wow, catapult trees twisting like the tree from Harry Potter, then unspooling. This launches their speared fruit at you, depositing seeds in your flesh. Yeah, best get that out before a new sapling erupts from your flesh. I love it. I love that. Yeah, hangman trees, things like that. Yeah. Of course, we have to have some uh, reskinned humanoids with like face huggers, or like octopi, like strapped on their backs or across the side of their face, or like sticking their proboscis down their throats and like walking around. Yes, I'm looking at you, Starro. Um, who are either hypnotized, puppeteered, mind controlled, dominated. Maybe people with their skulls split open and there's something living in the back of it, kind of like undulating with the tentacles reaching out of their eye sockets and mouths and such, but they're still walking around like humans or whatever. Yeah, yeah. Music, pacification, and Lovecraft. Okay, Azathoth the Mad, uh, The mad dreamer is kept asleep with music so he doesn't wake up from his dream, and the universe will not stop existing because he is dreaming us to life. Ow. Ow. That brings into mind the idea of like reality warping. Like maybe so many of these things exist in the world that the closer you get to their hives, that you bring your own baggage into their reality warped aura, so that reality warps because of your um insecurities, your fears, your desires, your guilt, unrequited love, your unfinished business, the your narcissism or whatever, and you bring that with you, and then it changes the like distances and gravity and things around. That would be kind of cool, especially if you could somehow have a list of monsters that correspond to maybe 10 to 12 different human fallacies, and they each like shadows represent one thing, and then fire giants represent something else, and black puddings represent something else, and like with your mind, like, oh, guilt represents black dragons, and obsession represents chokers or whatever. I don't know. I don't know where I'd start from that, but yeah. Mm-mm-mm. The Coleop Hive Queen, a bust-sized beetle grub that psychically dominates your body. Yeah, use that too. Yeah, of course, you have to have like human beings like drawn to it, just walking like lobotomized humans wandering around. Zombie hordes of people, but they're not dead. Their minds are already lost, and they don't feel any pain or anything. Mummies could be people encrusted with like um, some kind of like goo, or what's another word? Like a chrysalis kind of thing, like spun around their bodies, but they're still mobile or whatever, until the I don't know, the beetles finally grow inside of the person's brain and they fall over and then they spill out. What a great BFF creature though, right? Human beings that fall over and spill over and their skin splits, and then there's like bugs and stuff on the inside. Maybe the skeleton still exists or something when their skin sloughs off. I don't know. Zamar says, God, you remind me of a parasite in real life. It is attracted to water, so it infects grasshoppers, who then proceed to drown themselves in any pool of water, and the creature just shudders. Yeah. Sprouting like spores or something. Oof. Mike says, wasp kings will use their wings to create a droning noise. Oh, okay. That puts others to sleep. They can then inject you with their stingers, which are both venomous, and inject eggs into you. You'll want, yeah, you want those out too. Yeah, droning noises. I love it. I love it. Sick. Yeah, crawls right out the first available hole. Yeah, don't fall face first. Everyone's like, pull his pants down. Everyone's like, don't do it. Mufa says evil Peter Pan seems like a concept I could use in my Symbarum game for an adventure. Elves in that setting are known for stealing human babies and replacing them with changelings anyway. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Could you imagine? Oh, yes. And the okay, so at session zero, I understand this, that we really don't. Some people do, because it's so sensitive subject. We don't want to really add children into our games as like potential bad guys. You really don't want to have your sociopathic players slaughtering children, even if they are undead or something, mind controlled or whatever. But it would be pretty interesting that kids become the catalyst that spreads this thing. Like not that they're immune, but they are the children in the play world, but in the real world, it's having horrible events, right? Like kids think they're playing with toys, but they're really playing like puppeteers with grown folks and stuff like that. and or they're stealing the kids to so that they can grow them into adults that they could then harvest or whatever. And yeah, I absolutely could see something like that. That would be pretty crazy. Can you fly, Bobby? Mm-mm-mm. But Spinocore Duroy's Tellini in the Discord. No videos on. Is that a real thing? I can't copy. Shoot, it won't let me. Spinner. What the? What did you? How do you spell it? Spino. No. Did it come up? Spin. Let's see if I could share this with you guys here. Spinocerebellar ataxia is a group of inherent brain disorders. It affects your cerebellum, a part of your brain vital to coordination of physical movement and sometimes your spinal cord. This inherent condition worsens over time and causes specific problems with coordination, usually affecting eyes and hands. That's not what you put in the chat there, but so duties. Who's the quarter duties? Spin. Let's see. Nothing's coming up. Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, that's all right. Oh man. Okay. Let's see. The King says I had an idea to use Eldritch horror in Star Wars. I was going to have the players encounter the monolith and also have them hallucinate to think they were inside rubber suits for a moment. Ooh, for Star Wars, that's hmm. I'd be careful with that one because Star Wars kind of implies has an implicit heroism to it. Um, the ones that were aliens that would hallucinate that is yeah. um uh, uh, what's that's been used. That is a sci-fi trope where an alien species artifact egg or something is able to transport mentally humanoids that like humans and alien species that encounter it into another realm that seems so real that they navigate it, but to come to find out that either they've just left their bodies or they're just standing there or they've been transported somewhere else. There's a movie called Sphere that's kind of like that where they find an alien craft in the deep sea. They go down to the deep sea, they find the alien craft. Inside the alien craft, it's actually they find out that it's from the United States, and then inside of this vast chamber is a sphere. And when they get closer to the sphere and affecting the sphere, sphere's like a wish egg or something. It's kind of weird. Zamar says there's also the parasite that eats out a fish's tongue. Yes, so it can feed off its blood and mouth mucus. Simotha exigua, and I use that as a in the swamps book. There's there's a invasive species that can affect players where it goes inside of the mouth and deteriorates the tongue and replaces the character's tongue and such. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's pretty nasty. The Yanking says, I can imagine some players I've played with finding themselves in a children of the corn situation. I can imagine how they'd solve that problem. Yeah, that's why sometimes it's good to have moral dilemmas in games, and sometimes it's not. Those who've ever played the original was it B1 Keep on the Borderlands or B2? I can't remember. Anyway, um, that came in the red box and purple box. But anyway, yeah, Keep on the Borderlands had had the goblinoids in the cave with the pregnant mommies and the kids. And while it makes sense for them to be in there, it was the very first introduction of sociopathy and psychopathy in the players that are just like, "Ooh, I get to role play anything, right?" Yeah, and it's like, sometimes you don't play heroes, sometimes you play the villain. Yeah. Zamar says, "You just gave me an idea for a rescue quest and long form distraction for my game. I have established a little girl who likes to explore nearby forests." Okay. "The players have already found a fairy ring and have already traveled through the Feywilds and accidentally brought back a changeling. I could have the little girl disappear into the Feywild. The players will have to kill the changeling, remind the remind the fairy ring and or did you mean fairy king? Anyway, fairy ring and dive through the Feywild to find this girl and then help her with the issues that come from being in a place where oh, you haven't finished it." Oh, Mark says, "Getting reminded of the Lost Children arc from Berserk." Ooh. Yeah, I didn't wanna go down there. I don't I'll I I don't wanna go down this dark path because YouTube, they've got an algorithm that finds this kinda stuff. We start talking about, you know, mixing Lovecraftian horror and children is a very good thing. Although all of my videos are marked for not for kids, but you know what I mean. Zamar says emotions make up the core of the world, including what make up the people and its inhabitants. Ooh. Hey there, Dirty Shamrock. Good morning. Or good morning wherever you are at. It is first thing in the morning here as well. Now we what we're doing here is we're just world building. It's a commonality thing that I do where I like to take something like today using Lovecraftian horrors to world build with, and I think there's also the idea that there's something alien that can steal things from us that are exceptionally personal. So what I mean is, we feel very violated when someone breaks into. So I says, "Yeah, away from kids. Let's keep talking about the horrors of the animal kingdom." Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of horrors of the animal kingdom, especially writ large. You're just like, oh, there's some microscopic um, images and bacteria, just like the oh, I forgot the name of them already. Oh, wow, my brain just went farted. Anyway, there's some pretty horrible things that microscopically look pretty Lovecraftian. But anyway, there's something terrible about being violated. Now, when our home, our safety is violated, we feel horrible about it. But especially when our bodies are being violated. And H.R. Geiger, in an interview, actually admitted that the face huggers from the face huggers from Alien, the image of the hands with the essentially genitalia in the middle, it is was his physical representation of how big burly men would feel if they were being sexually assaulted, and he wanted that feeling to overcome. And when I see those things, it makes me think like, oh, like, ooh, and it's supposed to have that feeling. And I believe like something that can steal your memories, something that can not only just dredge up, but uses your very life experiences as fuel, as food or something, seems like a violation. And I like the idea that maybe there are, like Zamar was talking about, where you have a the world exists only because of as thoughts and dreams, and what is in our minds becomes a physical manifestation, and for other people to see it and to judge you on it would be pretty horrible. Especially even though it's not even your fault. Like if you have a guilt about something, the other people saying, "No, just get over it. It's not your fault." And you're like, "No, but I feel guilty about it," and then it just keeps happening over and over again. I'm surprised they didn't bring this up even more in the movie Inception. I know this isn't Lovecraftian, but in Inception, the main character, I think his name was Cobb or something, was being haunted by the guilt of his, wife that passed because of what he did to her when he affected her, he incepted her brain, and she kept hounding him and such. I think that'd be kind of awesome to have something like that running around while the PCs are like physically doing things. There's something mental happening in the background with the characters. The Yankee is talking about aberrant horrors. One of my favorite shows of all time is True Detective. Yeah. And that show manages to feel like cosmic horror despite things being mostly human. Absolutely. And that could be a precursor. Like the world of True Detective in a fantasy realm could be the precursor for something else that's happening where because a big part of True Detective is that people are doing things that seem there's crimes and things that are happening that seem far beyond explaining humanity, right? Like human beings are murdering people ritually and things like that, and they're investigating it. I think True Detective would be a great tier one, first level, first to fourth level type of introduction for players, and then it moves on. Maybe this is a slow invasion, or maybe this is an invasion, not a physical one coming from space and dropping things, or maybe this is a mental invasion where um, human beings' nightmares are physically creating a thing, kind of like beholders are born through thought and dreams and things like that. Zamar says there's a manga called Parasite, anime Parasite the Maxim, that I love to use as brain fodder for this. The point of the series is to explore what it means to be human. It's great. Would recommend. Okay. I wasn't the only one who saw that. Wisp, was it? I saw it too. Yeah. my I don't want to mess it up too much, but my camera is right here, and there was a wisp that went by, and normally I see it, but yeah, and my I have a so where my hands are sitting, this doesn't matter much. Where my hands are sitting, this is a closet, and I have a hutch inside my closet, and I have a sliding door. So the static electricity of my computer and the screen and the lights and everything is actually inside of a closet, and it gets staticky in there. And I have a feeling that's what happened. It'll draw like dust or something in front of it. So yes, unless that was some kind of eldritch horror trying to distract us, right? Um, something else I think that would be kind of cool, going back to like one love, one hate, one fear kind of thing for these eldritch horrors, is that we could design them like we don't have to do air quotes. They're just insane. You don't understand them. No, they could have an objective, and the player characters could kind of navigate the world based on that. Like, for example, the music thing, right? Maybe to the north, they can avoid these parasites or spores and the creatures that make them up north by using music. But down south, maybe it's um, a certain type of I'm thinking like a nectar or a food or a scent or something that drives them crazy, and like garlic to the classic garlic to vampires, it drives them away. Or maybe there's a ear piercing sound that's made, that maybe like a dog whistle that we don't hear but they hear, that drives them crazy. There could be something that draws them close, like if you consume something, it makes your blood stinky. I don't know what other way to do it. Anything like that, or maybe even being infected with a disease like from World War Z. Maybe being infected with a disease causes these things to bypass you because you are not a consumable, and the player characters may have to balance like, oh, we need to get a disease but then have it cured, or take a poison but then make sure that it doesn't kill us, but at the same time it might be weakening us or something like that. Like that might be kind of strange as well. Or maybe it's just, like I said, maybe it's just consuming a particular food or whatever, that really does it. So yeah. Yeah, and King says, "What if in this world there is an actual background music in one specific direction? The closer you get to it, the closer you get to something horrible buried deep, like a noise, like Mike brought this up, right? Like the idea that they have their Beatles or something that makes like a droning noise or sound, and it could be calling people to it. And loved ones screaming at their family and friends that end up getting drawn to the noise. Maybe people are sticking cotton in their ears, but maybe they just in the middle of the night they wake up and hear the noise and start walking away, and everyone's like, "No, pull them back!" And they're kind of like shrugging their family members off as they walk across the countryside, their feet bloody to get to this place to kneel down and pray before the insanity inducing creature. Which reminds me, Umber Hulks. We don't see Umber Hulks too often anymore, do we? Um, yeah, and Umber Hulks are supposed to be a creature. See, that's not on. There's images of an Umber Hulk, but they don't remind me. Where's the original like AD&D? Well, I guess they're insectoid, but anyway, Umber Hulks were supposed to be the insanity inducing mandible, half crab, half insectoid creatures, but we don't have to. It doesn't have to be related to them. Is that an Umber Hulk on the back of a Boule? It sure is. Right, right, yeah. Go ahead, do the damn thing. Anyway, yeah, we could absolutely reflavor, reskin any of these kind of creatures. Let's put this up here. There we go. Riding on the back. We could any of these creatures like reskin a Medusa, but instead of a Medusa paralyzing you, I mean petrifying you, it could be paralyzing you with like insanity be basically if you take a look at the Medusa's face, and of course the Medusa doesn't have to be a woman. It could just be like tendrils that split, but no one knows what the face really looks like. But when the tendrils are pushed back, and this multi-limbed creature pulls their tentacles back, whatever, and reveals their face, it's like yuck yuck and Mighty Man and Yuck Yuck, or whatever it was. And you see his face, and everyone's like, just driven insane until they are unpetrified. Going back to my skin eating creature, okay, based off of a Native American skinwalker legend, it's the fear that draws them in. In fact, the way I wrote it, they used to be used to help people. Let me see, though the horrors they have gone through, as long as you don't stay in their grasp for too long, they will eat your fears and memories of your fears, and you will become a braver warrior. Ooh, ooh, I like that, because on one hand, um, it is a benefit, right? Like maybe society has realized that these things have come, or maybe they've rationalized these things have come to make us better people. But then on the other hand, yeah, it's like you go too far, or it could be a challenge to make these great warriors or something. I like that. Mike Marin says, or even more abstract environmental factors, being in captivity is bad for predators and affects their physical health. And in Call of Cthulhu, capturing a monster for study often means it just disappears into goo. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu, the epitome classic game. I think it's up to like 6 or 7 iterations now. And of course, Lovecraftian horror, most of that is in, if not all of it, is in the public domain now, so you can absolutely use it without any royalty fees. And having like the player characters may be unable, or it might be like a mission to capture one or more of these creatures to study it before it disappears into goo, right? Yeah, it almost as if it only exists because of our nightmares. Yanking says it could be a droning noise, or it could be actual music, like a waltz or some sort of stringed instrument. Especially if the horrors realize that kind of music draws us in. Like maybe they've gone through a series of different sounds and effects until it's gotten to the ones that draw us in, and it's a byproduct that it happens to be actually melodic music. Could you imagine bards learning from that? Bards are considered evil because they're like their greatest songs literally affect your minds. Mm-mm-mm. Being near a city or near an accursed desert could make a creature become horrific. Yes, yes, absolutely. Heck, classically, a lot of monsters existed because of mythology, because of our own horrors, right? So, like those battlefields, the undead rise from and ghosts and things rise from their graves because of the horrors we did. So it could be something like that. Like, for example, maybe this comes about in your world because of the horrors that took place in the city where it was debauchery and decadence and deviance. The big 3Ds. Anyway, and that caused a side effect of their actual pain and horror and torturous behaviors that they considered to be normal to make a thing possible in this city, and then maybe it spread from there. Wow, smart. Yeah. Funny, Call of Cthulhu should be mentioned. I use the Delta Green system. Yep. My Delta Green, yep, another version of it. My players in that one shot fought the Neo KKK in Aberrant, Florida, a real place. Ooh. Ooh, I remember playing in one where we were each we had a Call of Cthulhu game where it was like the 1920s, and every character was a we each had to choose a minority at that time. And we were like down in, I don't know, it was like Alabama or Louisiana. It was kind of like the southern states of southern swampy states and such. And yeah, it was pretty. The horror was, of course, the horror on the inside of the culture was just horrible culture, and then on the outside were the monsters and such, and it was monsters from getting it from both ends. Yeah, Mark says Marco says an anime that comes to mind is Kato or Kato. Mishandled its story, but had some cool ideas. Alien comes down and starts rapidly evolving human society, giving infinite food or the ability to no longer need to sleep. Even if it all seems benign, you can't help but feel amazed or horrified, distrustful all at once. And wasn't that part like of an episode of, I want to say, X Files or Fringe or something, where I think it was X Files, where people were given the ability to sleep was taken away from people and it was driving them insane. That's also a thing too. Wow. Yeah. Samara says they used the creature to try commit racial crimes. They just so happened to have targeted a Delta Green agent, and it drew the organization's eye. Yeah, Delta Green. By the way, for those who don't know, Delta Green is like the far more serious Men in Black of the Call of Cthulhu universe. It's basically Call of Cthulhu, but you're trained agents to go against these things, as opposed to accidentally stumbling upon a thing, right? Uh, the King says, I'm imagining horrors that are created by our atrocities. Yeah, who resent us for creating them. Yeah, the creatures that exist because of mass graves, the things that were born of atomic bombs. Oh, hells yes. Oh, hell yeah. Could you imagine like atomic bomb ghosts of sorts? Yeah, the creatures exist from our atrocities, and now they hate us for existing in the first place and taking out their pain. They have to live with that pain forever. Like, no. By the way, Ibero, Florida, as of 2021, has a population of about 150 to 200. Ooh, I like that. Mike Marin says, I love Delta Green's connection of sanity and hit points with background bonds. That's great usage of every part of the character sheet. I'd love more mechanics like that. Maybe an idea for a D&D stream, DBJ? You know what? I got that from, okay, so if I want to expand on what you're mentioning, because John Harper, who created Blades in the Dark, you hear Blades in the Dark mentioned a lot, because Blades in the Dark has a lot of little things that when put together makes the game excellent. And one of the things that he mentioned in a podcast, um, was there is a vice mechanic in Blades in the Dark. I'm getting to the point where instead of downtime, he wanted downtime to not be downtime. In other words, he didn't want players turtling up. And what happens in fantasy gaming is players take a long or short rest, and what they do is they turtle up. They basically cover themselves, they turtle up, they stay away from the action. And he wanted characters to always have a threat. So he created a vice mechanic. So in order to recover your air quotes hit points, or rather to recover your what is called stress in Blades in the Dark, to recover it, you must engage in your vices. And so you must, and on your character sheet, you have to have one or more vices, and you go out into the city to engage in your vices to heal. So your vices could be corralling, it could be drugs, it might be sexual exploits, it could be getting into fights. And literally, I had a character that was like a bruiser who would heal by getting into street fights in dark back alleys. And um that combined with another game, Wraith the Oblivion, has something called fetters. You could use different words: fetters, anchors, attachments, or something. And in order for your wraith to heal, you're a ghost in the heal, you had to recover with your fetters. It was a person, place, or thing related to an emotion. So a person, maybe a loved one; a place, maybe the place where you were killed or that you had your best memories; or a thing like a ring or a book, a diary. And that was the place you would recover that. And I think using my point is recovering of sanity, hit points, whatever, for your game, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or another game. Um, I always felt like it would be cool. Let's say you have 60 hit points. You have to divide your hit points amongst your, I'm going to call them anchors. And each of those anchors you have to engage with to recover your sanity, to recover your drive, to recover your willpower. And I think that would be really cool to have something like that. Like, it would force characters to engage in the world, to do a thing, instead of going, Liamon's tiny hut, we sit for 8 hours and then go back to the fighting things. The Enking says you could imagine a real jerk using a system like that. Imagine someone who had to heal their hit points by peeing in strangers' gas tanks. Yes. Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah, um, that is exactly right. Yeah, what was it? We had a, a Blades in the Dark game, and one of the players, um, he felt guilt over something he had done, and would go to various bars to get in fights, drink his woes away, and that was his vice. It was drinking. Gambling's another one. You had to pick a vice. It was kind of cool. And I do like. Let me get back to this comment here. Put it back up here. M squared. That, like, yeah, I love mechanics like that. That where in the Blades in the Dark stress mechanic is both physical and mental. And I think hit points, the word hit points, is a terrible, it's a terrible word to use when it doesn't represent what it is. And and so words like stress, drive, willpower, things like that could actually combine mental and physical losses or whatever. But yeah, and there's plenty of other games that have foregone hit points and used other mechanisms, but yeah, and that just happens to be one of them. Let's see. Peeing in gas tanks, I love it. Yeah, yeah, I see you. Yes, and it is the time. Thank you very much, there, Z. Marco Desune says, if I pick, ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, time's up. Says, if I pick gaming as my vice, will I just cancel out my lowered stress due to gamer rage? Yeah. Hey, to recover your 30 hit points, you got to flip at least 3 tables. Damn it! I roll a crit fail again. Flip. Got my hit points back. Yeah. I don't know. it's very meta, but I like the idea, like you were mentioning, you guys are mentioning about like using the full character sheet. I love it a lot. Yeah, I love to see a dwarf healed by their ideal of honor. Okay, their ideal of honor by performing honorable actions, or a warlock restored by ritualistic casting or study. Yeah, why not? Build it like, and the thing is that it doesn't have to be positive, right? Like a character could have a connection to their uncle, and they go see their uncle. Their uncle's like, they get in an argument with their uncle because they didn't approve of their life choices, and they leave upset, but as they reconnect in the world to recover their drive to do a thing, but they have to reconnect to it and stuff. Yep, I know. Yeah. Somebody needs to wrap this up. They have to go pee in some gas tanks. Yeah. Well, I've always heard, what's the term? What, like, why are you upset? Did somebody pee in your Cheerios? I don't know. I just remember that as a kid. He was like, somebody peed in your Cheerios, didn't they? So yeah, so I said someone? No, I love with my heart. So I have several fins to give the gift of natural liquid ammonia to. Just a gift to you. Don't eat the yellow snow. It's not lemonade. Yeah. How do you know what it tastes like? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man. And let's share this tab instead. There we go. Peeing in the gas tank. And I'll leave you with that. That's recovering at least 15 hit points right here. There you go. No. Oh man. Yeah. No way to get that. All right, guys. You guys have a great one. We'll get into things like this later on, but yeah, thank you so much for being part of the show. If you're going this far and you're brand new to the channel, you find the channel, whatever, call to action, man. Like, share, subscribe. Give me a thumb. You can point it either any direction, up or down. Like, share, subscribe. Actually, join the Discord because people who are far more brilliant than I am are there too. So please do that, guys. Have a great one. I got to get out of this place. I don't know if I'll ever come back. Have a great one. And please don't pee in other people's gas tanks unless that's your thing, unless that's your kink. I'm not going to kink shame here. Peace.